In the 6th chapter of the Book of Enoch, 200 angels look down at the daughters of men and find them beautiful. They are not supposed to cross that line. They know they are not supposed to cross that line. So they make an oath. 1 Enoch chapter 6 verse 3. Shemihazah said to them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual curses, not to abandon this plan, but to do this deed. They descended on the summit of Mount Hermon. That is why the mountain was named Hermon, because they swore their curse upon it. The Hebrew word cherem means a ban, a curse, a solemn devotion to destruction. These 200 watchers made a covenant on a mountain, named for the curse of what they were about to do. Their names were recorded, all 200 of them. This is what 1 Enoch says they were called, who led them, what each one taught, and what it cost the world. The 200 were not an undifferentiated mass. They had a command structure. 1 Enoch chapter 6 lists 20 leaders, chiefs of 10, each commanding 10 watchers. Their names are Shemihazah, their chief, then Arachiel, Ramiel, Kokabeel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barachiel, Asael, Amaros, Batariel, Ananel, Zachiel, Samsapil, Satariel, Turiel, Jomiel, Sariel, and in some manuscript traditions, a 20th whose name varies. 20 chiefs, each chief over 10, that is 200 total. This structure matters because it tells us the watchers were not acting in chaos. They descended with organization. They had a leader, Shemihazah, who had recruited them, who had organized the oath, and who was clear-eyed enough to know that what they were doing was wrong. He said so himself. I alone shall be guilty of a great sin, he said. And then he led them down the mountain anyway. The name Shemihazah is worth pausing on. It appears in different forms across different manuscripts and traditions. Semjazah, Samyazah, Semihazah, Shemihazah. The Aramaic fragments from Qumran give us the closest form to the original. Shemihazah, 2 Aramaic words. The first word, Shemi or Shem, means name. The second word, Yazah, is more debated. One reading connects it to a root meaning he has seen. Another connects it to a root meaning mighty or powerful. So the name Shemihazah could mean the name has seen, as in God has seen, a name that implies divine awareness of what this being is doing. Or it could mean the mighty name, a name of power and authority. A third reading, less common, but linguistically possible, connects the second element to a root meaning rebellion, such the name of rebellion, or the one who rebelled in the name. No single reading commands consensus. What is notable is that the name is not obviously evil. It does not mean destroyer or devourer. It is a name that carries dignity, even weight. Shemihazah was not a minor figure. He was the chief of all 200, and his name, whatever it means exactly, does not erase his agency. The Book of Enoch is precise. He knew the sin. He named the sin. He led them into it. The 10th name on the list of chiefs is Asael. Some manuscripts give it as Azael, some as Azazel. These names are the same figure. The Aramaic allows for variant spellings, and across the Qumran fragments and the Ethiopic manuscripts, The same leader appears under slightly different forms. If you have watched our episode on Azazel, you already know what he became in Leviticus, the scapegoat of the Day of Atonement, the one into whose name the sins of Israel were sent into the wilderness. What is significant about his placement in this list is this. Shemihazah is listed first. Asael is listed 10th. In the hierarchy of the descent, Shemihazah is the organizer, the oath-taker, the one who recruited them all. Asael is subordinate to him. But in terms of what the Book of Enoch says about the consequences of the descent, Asael receives disproportionate focus. 1 Enoch chapter 8 dedicates its harshest language to him. The whole earth was corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel, not through Shemihazah, through Azazel specifically. His sin was not the oath or the descent. It was what he taught. And the Book of Enoch is very specific about what that was. 1 Enoch chapter 8 is the forbidden curriculum. The text lists what specific watchers taught humanity and treats each teaching as a category of corrupting knowledge. Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, the technology of killing at scale. He also taught them the art of making up the eyes and all manner of precious stones and the dyeing of garments. This pairing is not accidental. Weapons and beauty, the capacity for organized violence, and the technology of seduction. The Book of Enoch is saying these two things come from the same source. Shemihazah taught the casting of spells and root cuttings, the art of binding and cursing. Amaros taught the resolving of enchantments, the ability to undo what others had bound. So within the fallen hierarchy, you have both the binding of curses and their removal, a complete system of magical manipulation, both directions. Barakiel taught the signs of lightning. Kokabeel taught the portents of the stars, what the stars reveal about the future. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. Sariel taught the course of the moon. Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth. What we are looking at is a cosmological curriculum. The movements of every celestial and terrestrial object, sun, moon, stars, clouds, earth, taught to humanity by fallen watchers who were never authorized to teach it. Why was this knowledge forbidden? This is the question the text raises, but does not answer directly. The Book of Enoch does not say that metalworking or astronomy is evil in itself. It does not say that understanding the stars or the moon is corrupting by nature. What it says is that this knowledge was given to humanity by beings who were not authorized to give it, at a time when humanity was not ready to receive it, and that the result was corruption, violence, and destruction. The logic is not theological in the conventional sense. It is more like the logic of a premature inheritance. A child, given the full power of an adult's estate and authority before they have developed the judgment to use it responsibly, does not benefit from that gift. The gift becomes a ruin. The Watchers gave humanity cosmological and technological knowledge, the knowledge of how to kill efficiently, how to predict the future through celestial signs, how to bind and unbind through spoken power, without the moral and spiritual development that would have made that knowledge safe. The Book of Enoch calls this a corruption of righteousness, not a corruption of ignorance, which is being fixed by teaching, a corruption of righteousness, of the proper order of how knowledge is meant to flow from God through sanctioned channels, not seized from outside the proper order through an oath on a mountain named for a curse. The descent produced something beyond the teaching of forbidden knowledge. The Watchers took wives from the daughters of men, and those women bore children. 1 Enoch chapter 7. The women became pregnant and bore great giants whose height was 300 cubits. A cubit is approximately 18 inches, 54 feet by that measure, an obvious mythological figure, not a literal measurement. But the Hebrew behind the word giants is Nephilim, the fallen ones, the ones who were caused to fall. And the text's point is not the height, but the nature. These beings were neither human nor angelic. They were something that had not been designed to exist. They consumed everything humans produced, and when that was not enough, they turned on the animals and on humans themselves. 1 Enoch 7, verse 5. They began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and drink the blood thereof. Then the earth lodged an accusation against the lawless ones. That phrase matters. The earth itself filed a complaint. The land, in the Book of Enoch's framework, is not passive. It has standing. It can accuse. When the cry of the earth and the cry of the people and the groaning of the consumed went up together. 1 Enoch chapter 8 verse 4 says, "It was in this moment that the four great archangels heard and saw and went before the throne to report what was happening below." The sentence handed down in 1 Enoch chapters 9 through 10 is specific. Each category of transgressor receives a specific judgment. Azazel is dealt with first and most harshly. 1 Enoch 10, verse 4. Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the wilderness, which is in Dudale, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see the light. On the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. Dudale is the desert place. Later traditions associate it with Beth Hadudo in the Judean wilderness, the same region where the Essenes lived. The rocks, the darkness, the covered face, Azazel is not destroyed. He is bound and hidden until the judgment. Shemihazah and the other Watcher chiefs receive a different sentence. They are bound under the hills of the earth for 70 generations, again, not destroyed, but bound, held, waiting. Their children, the Nephilim, are sentenced through the flood. They will kill each other. And the evil spirits that proceed from their dead bodies. This is how the Book of Enoch explains the origin of demons. Those spirits have no authorized dwelling place on earth and will cause trouble until the day of the consummation. The names of the Watcher chiefs are not arbitrary. Each name in the Semitic tradition carries meaning, and the names given to these fallen leaders are a taxonomy of what they controlled or represented. Kokabil, Kokaf in Hebrew, means star, and El is the word for God or divine being. Star of God, or the divine star being. His domain was the knowledge of the stars. Shamziel, Shemesh, is Hebrew for sun, El for God, the divine sun being. His domain was the signs of the sun. Sariel, also transliterated as Suriel, Sar means prince or chief, El means God, the divine prince. His domain was the course of the moon. Barakiel, Barak means lightning in Hebrew, the divine lightning being. His domain was the signs of lightning. Ezekiel, Yechezkel, shares a root with the word for strength. or God, strengthens. His domain was the knowledge of clouds. What we see in these names is that the watchers who fell were not named randomly. Their names describe their functions. They were, before their descent, beings whose role was connected to celestial and natural phenomena. They were the divine beings responsible for maintaining and governing aspects of creation. When they fell, what they taught humanity was precisely the knowledge they had been given authority over. They misused their authorized domain by transmitting it outside the proper channel. The story of the 200 Watchers is the Book of Enoch's theory of evil. It is not the serpent in the garden offering a simple, forbidden fruit. It is a structured, organized decision by 200 named beings who knew they were crossing a line and crossed it anyway. They did not fall in ignorance. They deliberated. They took an oath. They named their own sin before they committed it. And what they introduced into the world was not chaos out of nothing. It was knowledge without covenant. They had knowledge that was real, that was accurate, that described how the world actually works, the movements of the stars, the technology of metalworking, the forces of enchantment. And they gave it to humanity without the moral structure, the spiritual preparation, the relationship with the divine that would have made that knowledge bearable. This is why the Book of Enoch's theory of evil resonates in a way that goes beyond mythology. Every generation confronts this exact problem: knowledge that is accurate, power that is real, and institutions, traditions, and structures of accountability that have failed to develop fast enough to govern what has been unleashed. The 200 Watchers are not a story about the ancient past. They are a story about the structure of how things go wrong when knowledge is separated from the covenant that should carry it. Subscribe to Enoch Unveiled. Every week, we go deeper into the ancient texts, the names, the meanings, the structures that the Book of Enoch builds underneath the world that the New Testament inherits. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.